The hull breach alarm blared as Evan frantically strapped himself into the escape pod. Red emergency lights cast long shadows across the cockpit while the research vessel's AI calmly announced their imminent destruction. Hull integrity at 12%. Impact with planetary surface in 45 seconds. Evan's fingers flew across the control panel, redirecting what little power remained toward the landing thrusters. Come on, he muttered through gritted teeth. The ship groaned around him, metal twisting as gravity pulled the crippled vessel toward the vibrant blue-green planet below. 30 seconds to impact. The botanical samples he'd spent months collecting were already jettisoned in secure pods. At least his research might survive this catastrophe, even if he didn't. The thought provided little comfort as the ship entered the atmosphere, friction turning the view screen into a wall of fire. 20 seconds to impact. Sweat beaded on Evan's forehead as he punched the final command sequence. The escape pod shuddered violently before detaching from the doomed vessel with a pneumatic hiss. The sudden jolt slammed his head against the headrest, momentarily blurring his vision. 10 seconds. The pod's smaller thrusters kicked in, slowing his descent but not enough. The dense canopy of alien forest rushed up to meet him, a sea of purple and blue vegetation unlike anything in his botanical catalogs. Evan tightened his harness, closed his eyes, and braced for impact. The crash came with a deafening crunch of metal and foliage. His body jerked against the restraints, pain shooting across his chest as the pod carved a path through the jungle before finally coming to rest in a small clearing. For several minutes, Evan remained still, taking inventory of his body. Bruised ribs certainly, but nothing felt broken. The taste of blood told him he'd bitten his tongue during the landing. When the ringing in his ears subsided, he realized the pod systems were still functional. The external sensors showed breathable atmosphere, though richer in oxygen than Earth standard. The temperature read a balmy 32 degrees Celsius with high humidity, survivable conditions. Evan released his harness with shaking hands and gathered his emergency pack. The botanist in him couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement beneath the fear. An unexplored alien ecosystem awaited him outside. Situation assessment, he told himself, falling back on his training. Establish shelter, secure water, signal for rescue. The pod door released with a gentle hiss, and humid air rushed in carrying the heavy scent of alien vegetation, sweet and slightly metallic. Evan stepped onto the soil of Azeria for the first time, the ground surprisingly springy beneath his boots. Over the next 3 days, Evan established a camp near the crash site. His emergency beacon transmitted steadily, though the planet's unusual magnetic field meant a rescue could take weeks or months. He rationed his supplies and began cataloging the local flora, discovering several species with remarkable medicinal properties. The massive trees with their iridescent bark particularly fascinated him, their leaves changing color with the angle of sunlight. On the 4th day, while venturing farther from camp to collect specimens, Evan heard a sound that froze him mid-step. A roar that seemed to vibrate the air itself, followed by a pained howl unlike anything he'd ever heard. His scientific curiosity warred with self-preservation instincts. Curiosity 1. Evan moved cautiously toward the sounds, clutching his specimen knife, a pitifully inadequate weapon. The foliage thickened, forcing him to crouch and push through dense undergrowth until he reached the edge of a small ravine. What he saw there stole his breath. A massive predator, easily the size of an earth lion but with thick mane of silver-blue fur that extended down its spine, thrashed against metal snares that bit deeply into its hind leg and flank. Its muscular body rippled with each movement, powerful jaws revealing rows of gleaming fangs as it snarled in pain and fury. Most striking were its eyes, burning amber with vertical pupils that locked onto Evan the moment he appeared. The creature's roar shook the ground beneath Evan's feet, yet despite its ferocity, he immediately recognized the creature was in dire trouble. The trap, clearly not of local design, had hooks that dug deeper with each struggle. Dark purple blood matted the beast's fur where the metal had pierced its hide. "Easy there," Evan said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand him but hoping his tone might soothe it. "I'm not here to hurt you." The beast lunged toward him, only to be yanked back by the merciless trap. The sudden movement tore its wounds wider, and it collapsed with a whimper that seemed incongruous coming from such a fearsome predator. Evan made a decision that defied all logic. He began to descend into the ravine, moving slowly with his hands visible. "I can help you," he said, maintaining his calm tone, "but you'll have to trust me." The creature's amber eyes tracked his every movement, a low growl rumbling continuously from its chest. When Evan was within 15 feet, it bared its fangs in warning. He stopped and crouched, making himself smaller. "I know you're scared. I would be too." The trap's design was sophisticated, meant to capture, not kill. Someone wanted this creature alive. Evan studied the mechanism, noting the release catch hidden along the central hub. He could free the beast, but doing so would place him within striking distance of those massive jaws. "I'm going to help you," Evan said, edging closer inch by inch. "Please don't eat me for it." The creature's growl intensified, but it didn't lunge again. Pain and blood loss had weakened it substantially. When Evan finally reached the trap's control mechanism, he was close enough to feel the heat radiating from the beast's body, to smell its musky scent tinged with the metallic odor of blood. With trembling fingers, he triggered the release. The snare sprang open with a metallic snap, and the creature collapsed fully to the ground, its massive chest heaving with labored breaths. Evan scrambled backward, expecting it to attack despite its injuries. Instead, the magnificent beast stared at him with those intelligent amber eyes, made a soft huffing sound, and then closed its eyes as consciousness slipped away. The rise and fall of its chest confirmed it still lived, but barely. Evan stood at the edge of another decision point. He could return to his camp, continue his cataloging, and wait for rescue. Or he could try to save this apex predator of an alien world. He sighed, already knowing what choice he would make. "My professors always said my curiosity would be the death of me," he muttered, kneeling beside the unconscious creature to examine its wounds. Let's hope they weren't being literal. Getting the beast out of the ravine had been a monumental task. Evan had constructed a crude travois from fallen branches and his reinforced sample tarp, then spent hours carefully dragging the creature to a more defensible position near a small stream. The exertion left him drenched in sweat, his ribs screaming in protest. As night fell, Evan kindled a small fire and began his medical work. The wounds were deep, tearing through muscle in several places. Without intervention, infection would set in by morning. He'd selected 3 local plant species with promising antimicrobial properties, grinding them into a paste using stones from the stream bed. "This might sting," he warned as he applied the mixture to the deepest gash. The unconscious beast's muscles tensed, a low growl rumbling in its chest though its eyes remained closed. When the largest wounds were dressed, Evan sat back on his heels, exhaustion settling into his bones. Near midnight, the beast stirred. Evan tensed, hand moving to his specimen knife though he knew it would provide little protection. Amber eyes flickered open, immediately focusing on him with alarming clarity. "Easy," Evan said softly, remaining perfectly still. "You're hurt pretty badly." The creature, which Evan had started mentally calling Nizadra after finding strange glyphs on a collar around its neck, lifted its massive head, nostrils flaring as it scented the air. Its gaze moved from Evan to the dressed wounds on its flank, then back to Evan. A low, questioning rumble emanated from its chest. Slowly, telegraphing his movements, Evan reached for a container holding pain-relieving solution he'd made from local tree sap. "This will help with the pain," he explained, knowing the creature couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone conveyed his intentions. He placed the container near the beast's head, then retreated several steps. The Nizadra sniffed the liquid cautiously, then lapped at it with a broad, textured tongue. After a moment, it drank the entire solution. Evan expected the beast to rest again, but instead it continued watching him with unnerving intensity. Minutes stretched into an hour as they studied each other across the small fire. "I don't suppose you could tell me who put that trap there," Evan said to break the silence. "Not exactly standard research equipment." The Nizadra's ears flicked forward at his voice. It made a soft chuffing sound that Evan could have sworn carried amusement. When Evan finally dozed off shortly before dawn, he dreamed of running through endless purple forests alongside a silver-blue shadow. He woke with a start to find the Nizadra still watching him, but something had changed. The wariness had diminished, replaced by something Evan couldn't quite name. He approached cautiously, medical supplies in hand. Those bandages need changing. To his astonishment, the beast shifted its position, exposing the injured flank. The movement clearly caused pain, but the Nizadra remained still as Evan knelt beside it. "Thank you," he murmured, carefully removing the old dressings. The wounds looked cleaner, the exotic biology of the creature already beginning the healing process. "You heal fast." As he worked, the Nizadra's massive head turned to watch him. Evan found himself explaining each step of the treatment, describing the properties of the plants he was using and his theories on accelerating the healing process. The creature's attentive posture gave the uncanny impression that it understood. When he finished, Evan sat back and offered the beast fresh water in his camp bowl. "You should drink. Blood loss causes dehydration in most species." After a moment's hesitation, the Nizadra drank, then nudged the empty bowl back toward Evan with surprising gentleness. "You're welcome," Evan said, smiling despite himself. That afternoon, he ventured a short distance to gather more medicinal plants. When he returned, he found a small, feathered creature, similar to a rabbit but with 6 legs, dead beside the Nizadra. The beast nudged it toward Evan with its massive paw. "Is this for me?" Evan asked incredulously. The Nizadra blinked once, slowly, then looked pointedly at the fire. Evan laughed, the sound startling in the quiet forest. "A thank you gift? Well, I appreciate it. I was getting tired of emergency rations." Over the following days, an unlikely partnership formed. The Nizadra's wounds healed with remarkable speed, and its strength returned steadily. It began accompanying Evan on short forays to collect specimens, moving with fluid grace despite its size. The creature seemed genuinely interested in Evan's botanical work, often bringing him unusual plants it had found. "You're quite the research assistant," Evan told it one evening as they shared another meal by the fire. The Nizadra had proven adept at hunting the local wildlife, and Evan had learned to prepare several edible species. "I should put you on the payroll." The beast made that soft chuffing sound again, and Evan was certain it was laughter. It was on the 7th day that everything changed. Evan was cataloging samples when the Nizadra suddenly tensed, its head snapping toward the sky. A low growl built in its chest, but this time it wasn't directed at Evan, it was protective, warning. High above, a sleek spacecraft descended through the clouds, its hull gleaming with advanced technology that made Evan's research vessel look primitive by comparison. The ship touched down in the clearing where Evan had first crashed, its landing thrusters barely disturbing the alien vegetation. As the engines powered down, a ramp extended from the vessel's belly, and figures began to emerge. They were humanoid but clearly not human, tall and elegant with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight. Their features were sharp and angular, with large dark eyes that held an unsettling intensity. They wore form-fitting suits that appeared to be part technology, part organic material. The leader, distinguished by intricate golden patterns woven through her suit, stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice carried an otherworldly resonance that seemed to translate directly into Evan's mind. "Human," she said, the word carrying both curiosity and disdain. "You will stand down. We have come to reclaim what was stolen from us." Evan rose slowly, positioning himself between the newcomers and the Nizadra, which had moved to stand behind him. "Stolen? I don't understand. I'm just a botanist. My ship crashed here accidentally." The leader's gaze moved past him to the Nizadra, and her expression hardened. "The apex hunter belongs to the Valtharian Empire. It was taken from our hunting preserve during transport. You will surrender it immediately." "Hunting preserve?" Evan's voice carried disbelief and growing anger. You mean you hunt these creatures for sport? The Nizadra are the apex predators of 17 different worlds, another Valfarian said, stepping forward. This one's suit bore military insignia. They are prized for their intelligence, their strength, and their rarity. This specimen is particularly valuable, it is one of the last of its subspecies. Behind Evan, the Nizadra growled low, a sound that vibrated through the ground. Evan could feel the creature's tension, its readiness to fight despite being outnumbered. No, Evan said firmly. I won't let you take him. The leader, who had introduced herself as Princess Valeria, tilted her head as if studying a particularly interesting insect. You would stand against the Valfarian Empire for an animal? Humans truly are as foolish as the reports suggest. He's not just an animal, Evan replied, his hand moving to rest on the Nizadra's flank. The creature's warmth and steady breathing gave him courage. He's intelligent, capable of gratitude and friendship. He saved my life just as I saved his. Sentiment, the military officer spat. The creature is property of the Empire. You have no claim to it. I have every claim, Evan said, his voice growing stronger. I freed him from your trap, healed his wounds, and earned his trust. That means something. Princess Valeria studied him for a long moment, then gestured to her soldiers. Captain Thorn, subdue the human. Carefully, we may have use for him. And prepare the stasis field for the Nizadra. The soldiers moved forward with practiced precision, energy weapons humming to life. Evan stepped back, pressing against the Nizadra's side, feeling the creature's muscles coil for action. Wait, he said desperately. There has to be another way. Some kind of negotiation. Humans negotiate from positions of strength, Valeria interrupted. You possess neither strength nor leverage. Stand aside. The first soldier raised his weapon, aiming a blue energy net at the Nizadra. In that instant, everything changed. The Nizadra moved with lightning speed, leaping over Evan to land among the soldiers. Its massive claws swept through their formation, sending two sprawling while its jaws closed around a third soldier's weapon, crushing it to sparks. The creature's roar echoed across the clearing, a sound of pure fury and defiance. No! Evan shouted, running after it. You'll get yourself killed. But the Nizadra was already in full combat mode, using its intelligence and natural abilities to devastating effect. It herded the soldiers away from Evan, keeping itself between them and the human who had saved its life. Captain Thorn raised a larger weapon, something that hummed with lethal energy. Stand down, beast, or face the consequences. The Nizadra crouched, amber eyes locked on the captain, clearly understanding the threat but unwilling to back down. Its loyalty to Evan had become absolute. Stop this! Evan shouted, throwing himself between the captain and the Nizadra. I won't let you hurt him. Thorn's finger tightened on the trigger, and Evan closed his eyes, preparing for the end. The energy blast never came. Enough, Princess Valeria commanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Captain Thorn lowered his weapon, confusion clear on his features. Your Highness, he questioned. Valeria approached slowly, her dark eyes fixed on Evan and the Nizadra. The great beast had positioned itself protectively around Evan, but its attention remained focused on the armed soldiers. In all our hunts across 17 worlds, she said thoughtfully, never has a Nizadra shown such loyalty to another species. They are solitary creatures, bonding only with their own kind, and then rarely. She stopped just outside the creature's reach. Yet this one would die for you, human. Why? Evan straightened, meeting her gaze despite his fear. Because I treated him with respect instead of as a trophy. Because I saw him as an individual, not property. Because sometimes, compassion matters more than conquest. The Nizadra made a soft rumbling sound, pressing closer to Evan's side. The creature's massive head turned toward the princess, amber eyes alert but no longer entirely hostile. Fascinating, Valeria murmured. She began to circle them slowly, studying the unprecedented partnership. "Captain, lower your weapons. All of you. Your Highness, the creature is extremely dangerous." "The creature is protecting something it values," she corrected. "There is honor in that, even from a beast." Her gaze returned to Evan. "You interest me, human. Few beings in the galaxy would risk their lives for another species, particularly one that could easily kill them." Evan felt a glimmer of hope. "Then you'll let us go?" "Go." Valeria laughed, the sound like chimes in an alien wind. "No, human. I have a different proposition." She gestured toward her ship. "Join the Valtharian Empire. You and your companion." "Join you?" Evan's voice carried disbelief. "To do what?" "The Empire spans thousands of worlds, millions of species. Yet we understand so little about the bonds between different forms of life." Her expression grew thoughtful. "You have accomplished something our xenobiologists deemed impossible. That knowledge has value beyond any single hunting prize." Evan looked down at the Nizadra, whose amber eyes met his with unmistakable intelligence. In that gaze, he saw trust, loyalty, and something that might have been hope. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked carefully. "A partnership," Valeria replied. "You would serve as our chief xenobiologist, studying interspecies relationships across our domain. Your companion would be free, no longer property but a citizen of the Empire with full protections under our law." She paused. "And you would have resources beyond your imagination, entire worlds to explore, species to catalog, mysteries to unravel." It was everything Evan had ever dreamed of as a scientist, but he sensed a trap. "And in return?" "Your expertise. Your unique perspective on what you humans call compassion. The Empire is vast but not always wise. Perhaps it is time we learn to see our subjects as more than resources." She extended one pale, long-fingered hand. "What say you, Dr. Evan Matthews?" Evan looked at the Nizadra one more time. The great creature nuzzled his shoulder gently, then made that soft chuffing sound he'd come to recognize as approval. "We'll need guarantees," Evan said finally. "Protection for other Nizadra, an end to the hunting of sentient species, and the right to refuse any assignment that violates our principles." Valeria's smile was sharp but genuine. "You negotiate better than most diplomats." "Very well. Captain Thorne, prepare new documentation. Dr. Matthews and his companion are now citizens of the Empire, with all rights and privileges thereof." As the Valtharian soldiers began securing their equipment, Evan ran his hand through the Nizadra's silver-blue mane. "What do you think, old friend? Ready for another adventure?" The great beast's rumbling response sounded remarkably like contentment. 3 months later, Evan stood on the observation deck of the Imperial research vessel Convergence, watching a newly discovered world rotate slowly below. Beside him, the Nizadra, who had chosen the name Keth from the ship's linguistic database, observed with equal fascination. Their first assignment had been to establish communication protocols with a silicon-based species that had been resistant to Imperial contact. It had taken weeks, but eventually, Evan and Keth had found common ground through mathematical concepts and shared appreciation for crystalline art forms. "Another success, Dr. Matthews," Princess Valeria said, approaching from behind. She had taken personal interest in their missions, often accompanying them to observe their methods. "The Christek delegation has agreed to formal diplomatic relations. Understanding usually comes down to finding what species have in common rather than focusing on differences," Evan replied. "Keth taught me that." The Nizadra made an amused chuffing sound and bumped Evan's shoulder with his massive head. "Your methods continue to astound our diplomatic corps," Valeria admitted. "Who would have thought that compassion could be weaponized so effectively?" Evan laughed. "It's not a weapon, Your Highness. It's just the right tool for the job." As the ship prepared for hyperjump to their next assignment, Evan reflected on the strange path that had brought them here. He'd crashed on an alien world as a simple botanist and emerged as something far more significant, a bridge between species, a voice for understanding in a galaxy too often ruled by conquest. The Nizadra, Keth, had found something similar. No longer just an apex predator, he had become a symbol of what was possible when different species chose cooperation over conflict. Looking out at the stars streaming past as they entered hyperspace, Evan smiled. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in Imperial history, they were approaching it with open hands instead of closed fists. Behind them, the bridge crew worked efficiently, aliens from a dozen different worlds united in common purpose. It was exactly the kind of future Evan had always hoped was possible. "Ready for the next adventure, partner?" he asked Keth quietly. The great beast's amber eyes reflected the starlight as he made that familiar sound of contentment and agreement. Together, they watched the universe unfold before them, two unlikely friends who had changed an empire simply by showing that different didn't have to mean enemy. In the end, that was perhaps the most human trait of all, the ability to see potential friends where others saw only strangers. The end.